Welcome to Son of a Glitch. Join us as we explore some of the internet's craziest glitch stories. Story 1. I'd been riding the tail end of a lean month. Hours cut, payday still a dot on the horizon, and I was down to a few pantry survivors and a package of ground beef in the fridge. Dinner would have to be improvised. Taco pasta, maybe. Franken meal. Don't judge me. I got the beef going in a skillet with my DIY taco blend. Paprika, cumin, garlic powder, chili cracked pepper. The scent lifted from the pan, coppery and warm, promising comfort. I set water to boil and reached into the pasta cupboard, already bracing myself for the dusty elbow macaroni I was sure was hiding at the back. Instead, my hand came out holding a bag that didn't belong to this timeline. Egg noodles. Burkle stamped in big, confident letters. Everything else in German. No bilingual French-English label, no nutrition facts in that neat little Canadian grid. The plastic had that matte, papery feel you don't get on store-brand stuff. There was even a tiny printed suggestion, at least I think it was a suggestion, with a cartoon pot and a smiling spoon. Zero English anywhere, like the package had slipped across a border while the universe blinked. I just stood there, one fist around the bag like I'd caught a fucking relic. My heart went tripwire fast. I live alone. No one had been over. I ordered groceries online, because I hate the fluorescent purgatory of supermarket aisles. My app history? Nothing. I searched the store catalog before. No Burkle, no German egg noodles, no surprise the broke guy category. But there it was in my hand, a grinning stranger of a carb. I pictured an alternate version of me, slimmer, better haircut, definitely owns a proper pasta pot, strolling through a Berlin specialty shop thinking, you know what future me in Canada needs? Noodles. Maybe he tucked the bag into his backpack, hopped a train, and somewhere between our timelines the zipper teeth became the cogs of a cosmic gear, and the bag fell into my cupboard. Or some benevolent kitchen god said, he must eat, and booped the Burkle into place with a celestial finger. I know it sounds ridiculous, but so is finding contraband pasta in your cupboard like a fucking haunted housewarming gift. The water reached a rolling boil, an impatient roar, and I realized I was still clutching the bag, half expecting it to dissolve into mist. I flipped it over. Instructions I couldn't read. A little map icon? Or a factory? Maybe it was secretly a recall notice. Warning: do not cook interdimensional egg pasta without proper wards. Side effects may include nosebleeds, déjà vu, and becoming your own neighbor. I cut it open anyway. Desperation is a bully, and hunger's a gossip. Between them, my better judgment didn't stand a chance. The noodles slid out with a chalky whisper. They looked normal, a bit paler than I'm used to, with edges that seemed too tidy, like they'd been outlined with a razor-thin pencil. I dumped them into the pot, and the sound, like dry leaves kissing steam, gave me a quick shiver. I told myself to quit being dramatic. People eat stranger things than orphan German noodles. While they cooked, I stirred the beef, added a splash of water, and my spice mix. The cumin opened like a warm door. I tossed in a handful of frozen corn, and a spoonful of tomato paste I found hiding in the fridge door like a guilty secret. The noodles softened faster than I expected. I fished one out with a spoon, blew on it, tasted. It was fine. Good even. Slightly eggshell sweet, tender without going gummy. Nothing exploded. Nothing whispered my name from inside the pot. Okay. I drained them, the steam clouding up my glasses, then married noodles to beef in the skillet. The sizzle sounded perfectly, gloriously normal. I plated up, sprinkled some stale cheddar shards I scraped from a bag corner, and sat at my tiny kitchen table, which wobbles unless you threaten it. First bite, savory, comforting, familiar enough to make my shoulders drop. Second bite, I noticed a faint, clean taste, like spring water. Third bite, I swore the noodles had a texture I couldn't place, like they yielded in 3 distinct steps instead of one. Not soft, more like soft, then a delicate give, then a final hush, as if they remembered being dough a second longer than they should. I ate the whole goddamn plate. And then the worry crawled back. What if there were rules on that package? Boil no longer than 7 minutes, or risk inviting a doppelganger. Consume before midnight, lest you wake speaking in umlauts. I checked my phone for a translation app, then remembered my data was throttled to dial-up speed, because I'd been streaming comfort shows like a man avoiding real life. I just sat there, fork in hand, listening to the building settle, to my fridge hum, to a wind that suddenly sounded like it was reading a list. The silence in my apartment had a new shape. I went back to the cupboard. No second bag. No hidden trapdoor behind the cereal. I opened the grocery app. Searched Burkel, egg noodles, German, weird. Nothing. I scrolled my order history anyway, as if the past might edit itself to make me sane. It didn't. I took the empty bag to my desk like a detective with a single clue. I googled the brand on my throttled connection. Found a few German sites that made my browser feel shy. I recognized a couple of words, Eier, Qualitat, Herkunft, enough high school German to know. Egg quality origin. No shipping to Canada. No English pages. The reality felt like it was grinning. And that's when the loneliness hit. Not the dramatic kind. The mundane, petty kind that sneaks in at the edges of your day. The kind where you want to text someone a photo of a stupid pasta bag and say, "Explain this shit," and they send back 20 laughing emojis and then call you, voice warm, kitchen clattering in the background. The kind where someone else's breath lives in the room. I put the bag down and laughed, a single stupid bark. Maybe I manifested it, I said to no one. I'd told myself before that the universe sometimes nudges. Once a parking spot appeared like a magic trick. Another time, a lost keychain turned up in a shoe I'd already checked. Small, almost rude miracles. Why not a bag of noodles for a broke idiot who just needed to eat? I washed the skillet, wiped the counter, and tucked the empty Burkel bag into the drawer where I keep batteries and birthday candles and things that matter for no reason. A shrine to stray timelines. Story 2. The mid-90s in rural Mexico wasn't exactly a playground for kids. My cousins and I spent our summers in a small town, so remote it felt like time had paused. No plumbing, no proper streets, just outhouses in the backyards and dirt roads that carried the smell of dust long after a car or donkey cart passed through. The evenings were slow, sometimes unbearable in their quiet, so we made our own entertainment, stories, gossip, daring each other to wander closer to the mountains after dark. One night, after hanging out at a buddy's family store, the conversation turned to a man everyone in town seemed to whisper about. He was old, late 60s, maybe older, and he lived alone on his property. No wife, no children, no visitors. My cousin said he once told him that he could escape his enemies by disappearing. That they'd trample over him, hurting him, but never find him. He'd grin when he said it, like it was some private joke. The man already had a reputation. Some called him a brujo, a warlock. Others whispered he was cursed. He never joined town gatherings, never lingered at the market, never sat in the plaza. Just an old man in an adobe house with cracked walls and an overgrown yard, carrying an aura that felt wrong. That night we sat in the shuttered store, huddled together as my cousin swore up and down the man knew black magic. Some of us laughed nervously, others leaned in closer, as if we were daring the shadows themselves to lean back. By the time we finally left, the air outside was cool and empty. The road stretched quiet, the only sound the crunch of gravel under our shoes. That's when we saw him. His adobe wall was maybe 6 feet tall, too high for a man his age to peer over naturally. But there he was, his head and shoulders above it, leaning awkwardly as though standing on a chair. He was staring straight at us, a grotesque smile splitting his face from ear to ear, his head bobbing in an unsettling rhythm. It wasn't just a look, it was acknowledgement, like he knew exactly what we'd been saying about him inside the store. Every hair on my body stood up. My cousins froze. Nobody made a joke this time. We just walked faster, the sound of our own feet suddenly deafening on the dirt road. I didn't look back, but I could feel his eyes pressing against my spine until we turned the corner. For years I dismissed it as a creepy old man playing a trick, but the memory refuses to sit still. His words about disappearing, his uncanny smile, the timing, appearing right after we spoke of him. Now I think about the folklore I grew up with, witches that turn into owls, people who walk between forms. Skinwalkers, though we didn't use that word. And I wonder, did we witness black magic that night? Or did black magic witness us? Story 3. I was still in primary school, a kid with no real worries beyond homework and which Lego set I was building that week. A few days after Christmas, I was on the carpet in my bedroom, surrounded by bricks and minifigures, completely lost in play. The hallway outside my room glowed faintly yellow from the light above the stairs. From my angle on the floor, I could see the banister and part of the wall beyond the doorframe. It was ordinary safe. Nothing about that evening suggested I was about to see something I'd never forget. At first, I didn't notice anything unusual. My eyes were glued to the Lego fortress I was building. But a flicker of movement brushed at the corner of my vision, subtle enough that I might have ignored it. Something told me to look up. That's when I saw it. A figure was slowly sliding into view from the left side of the doorframe. It wasn't walking, more like drifting, its feet not touching the ground but hovering maybe half a meter above the floor. The size made no sense. Taller than me, but not adult tall, somewhere between 3 and 4.5 feet. It was shaped like a person, but wrong. An aura shimmered around it, strange and unreal. A purplish glow, mixed with a shade of greenish gray, like celadone pottery. It wasn't bright enough to light the room, just enough to make the thing look separate from everything else, like it had been cut and pasted from another place. It wore clothes, formal even, purple trousers, a jacket, and black shoes. The outfit looked stiff, as if it belonged to another time. The figure itself was hunched slightly, its limbs bent as though frozen mid-motion. The arms were locked at its sides, elbows crooked, fingers spread wide and unnaturally rigid. The head was too large, out of proportion, covered with a mop of dark hair. I could make out ears that jutted sharply, and a nose long enough to cast its own shadow across a cheekbone. But the details blurred, as though my eyes weren't allowed to hold the face too long. I froze. Every muscle in my body locked. I stared for 3 seconds, maybe less, though it stretched like an eternity. A chill rippled over me, tightening my skin. My stomach knotted, and every instinct screamed the same thing: don't move. Don't let it see you. I dropped my gaze back to the Lego bricks and pretended to play, hands fumbling across the plastic pieces. My thoughts raced. Maybe if I acted normal, it would pass me by. Maybe if I didn't acknowledge it, it would believe I hadn't seen. But the pull of curiosity was too strong. Against my better judgment, I let my eyes shift upward again, slowly, careful not to tilt my head. The figure was still there, halfway across the doorframe now, gliding in silence until it vanished from view, swallowed by the wall beyond. When it disappeared, the silence in my room grew unbearable. I sat frozen for what felt like forever before gathering the courage to bolt. My parents were downstairs watching TV, their laughter and voices floating up. I sprinted past the hallway without looking, down the stairs 2 at a time, and landed on the couch beside them, heart still hammering. I didn't say a word. Story 4. Grief has a taste. Bitter, metallic, like the back of your tongue after a night of crying into your pillow. That's the taste that sat in my mouth when Lilo died. She wasn't just a dog. She was the heartbeat in our house, the third body in our bed, the reason our mornings felt alive. A black pit bull with muscles cut like a goddamn athlete and a white star-shaped blaze on her chest. She was gorgeous, regal, even. The kind of animal strangers would stop and admire, and the kind of animal you couldn't help but spoil. She was ours for 13 years, and in that span, she became more than family. She was our child. But cancer doesn't give a fuck about family. She slowed down first. The long, bounding runs became limps. The stairs turned into Everest. The once eager appetite dulled into hesitation. We did what we could: supplements, warm blankets, endless strokes down her spine. But no matter how much love you pour into a dying body, you can't plug the leaks. The vet told us what we already knew. She was slipping, and all we could do was make the fall softer. Those last nights were brutal and holy. My wife and I lay beside her on the floor, whispering into her ears like children begging for a miracle. I'd rub her ears, kiss the top of her head, and sing, badly off-key but honest. "You're my shining star," I told her over and over. That white blaze wasn't just fur anymore. It was her symbol, her stamp on the universe, my fucking religion. When she stopped eating, we knew. That was her goodbye. That was her saying, "I'm done suffering. Let me go." We invited friends who had loved her like their own to come by. The vet came to the house so she wouldn't die on a cold metal table, but in her home, surrounded by the voices she knew. The moment she passed, it felt like someone had gutted me. One minute her chest rose, the next it didn't, and the silence in that space was obscene. I held her head in my lap and whispered, "Good girl, I love you always, forever." My wife sobbed against her side. And then she was gone. Just like that. The next day, I didn't want to exist. My body moved, but my mind was ash. My wife suggested we still go to see The Force Awakens. We had tickets reserved. It sounded absurd, but grief is strange. Sometimes distraction is the only way to keep breathing. So we went, sat in the dark with popcorn neither of us touched, and watched flashing lights and laser swords blur through tears. It didn't help. Every explosion on screen reminded me of her bark. Every dramatic score reminded me of her howl. My mind kept circling back to the feel of her fur under my palm as her body went slack. By the time we left, the movie could have been about anything. My only reality was absence. We got home late. For some reason, instead of going through the garage like usual, we came through the front door. My wife walked in behind me, then stopped. "Did you see that?" she asked. "What?" I muttered, numb. "There's a balloon. Outside." I blinked. "A balloon?" "Yeah," she said, pointing back toward the porch. "On the ground, right by the door." I stepped outside, and there it was, a shiny metallic mylar balloon in the shape of a star. Gold, catching the porch light like it was glowing from the inside. I picked it up, and the realization punched me straight in the chest. A star. My star. Lilo's star. My wife gasped when she saw my face. Tears spilled hot down my cheeks before I even knew they were coming. I held that balloon like it was her paw, like she'd sent it, one last gift, one last wink from whatever lay beyond. "I'm still here. Don't stop singing. Don't stop loving me." It didn't matter how it got there, whether it blew off from some party miles away, or whether a neighbor's kid lost hold of it. Rational explanations collapse under the weight of grief. For me, there was only one truth: Lilo sent it. Story 5. That morning, everything was normal, until it wasn't. I'd already washed my face, massaged in the serum, dabbed on eye cream with practiced fingers. My skin felt fresh. I grabbed my makeup bag, leaned toward the bathroom mirror, and froze. The face staring back at me wasn't mine. Or, it was mine, but decades too far along. My heart stuttered like I'd missed a step on a staircase. The reflection showed me in my 60s, sagging eyelids folded down heavy, crow's feet carving trenches into the corners of my eyes, deep lines bracketing my mouth. My forehead was marked with furrows like someone had dragged a chisel across it. The woman in the glass looked tired, worn thin by years, but she was me. I blinked hard, expecting the image to snap back like a bad trick of the light. Nothing changed. I leaned in, studying the older version of myself with the same curiosity and horror you'd give to a stranger caught rifling through your drawers. 10 full seconds ticked by. I could see the tiny quiver in her lip, the shadow under her chin, details too precise to dismiss as imagination. It was me, just not yet. Panic licked at the edges of my throat. I whipped my head to the side, staring at the tiled wall. When I finally forced myself to look back, my usual 30-something face had returned. Smooth enough, with only the faintest lines if I looked cruelly close. The shift was instant, jarring like someone flipping channels. I gripped the counter until my knuckles blanched. I'd just looked in this mirror minutes ago while washing my face. Everything had been normal. So what the hell had I seen? The logical part of my brain tried to line up excuses. Maybe the audiobook had distracted me, and my eyes had gone unfocused. Maybe steam from the shower warped the reflection. Maybe fatigue had played a trick. But my body knew better. My body remembered the adrenaline spike, the electric certainty that I'd glimpsed something real. It left me rattled in a way I couldn't shake. I found myself testing the mirror again and again that day, before leaving for work, after coming home, brushing my teeth at night. Each time, it was only me looking back. Still, the memory of that older face clung like a burr. Was it a glitch? Some tear in the veil between present and future? Or had I slipped sideways into another version of myself, an alternate timeline where time had marched further, faster? Story 6. I'd been getting ready to leave, makeup half done, hair not cooperating, music blasting through my AirPods while I moved from mirror to dresser and back again. The AirPods case sat right where I'd put it, on top of my neatly made bed, glaringly obvious against the dark blue sheets. White on navy. Unmissable. I remember glancing at it. It looked almost smug, waiting there like a promise that once I was done with eyeliner, I could scoop it up, snap it shut, and toss it into my bag. That was the plan. I turned around, literally for a second, to grab my eyeliner from the vanity. When I turned back, the case was gone. Not misplaced. Not nudged aside. Gone. I froze at first, blinking as though my eyes had blurred. Then I scanned the entire bedspread, every inch of that smooth, flat surface. Nothing. My brain scrambled for excuses. Maybe I'd picked it up absent-mindedly, maybe it slid, maybe I'd put it somewhere else. But no. I knew what I'd seen. I had placed it right there. Frustration hit like caffeine. I pulled the blanket back, shook out the pillows. Nothing. I went through the sheets again, inch by inch. I checked the floor even though my bed sits on storage drawers that touch the ground. There is no under the bed. I checked anyway, crawling on my hands and knees, as if I might find a secret crack in reality hiding beneath the frame. When that failed, I moved to desperation. I rifled through my dresser drawers, my closet, even the dirty laundry basket. I checked the pockets of jeans I hadn't worn in months. I shook out hoodies. I even dug through my sock drawer, as if the damn thing had teleported into rolled-up cotton. Still nothing. By then, my room looked like a crime scene. Every blanket was in the hallway, clothes scattered, drawers hanging open. My pulse was pounding with a cocktail of irritation and disbelief. I tore the room apart because I had to find it. I needed the satisfaction of snapping it shut, of proving to myself I wasn't losing my mind. But the case had vanished as completely as if it had never existed. The absurdity gnawed at me for the rest of the day. These weren't just any earbuds, they were part of my daily ritual. I used them for music while cleaning, for podcasts while cooking, for zoning out when I couldn't stand my own thoughts. They were my little portable escape hatch. Without the case, they were homeless, still usable but incomplete, like teeth without a jaw. That night I searched again, slower this time. I moved with the deliberate paranoia of someone who no longer trusted her own reality. I checked places I knew it couldn't be. The fridge, the bathroom cabinet, the pantry. Still nothing. Days turned into weeks. Each time I did laundry, I half expected the case to tumble out of a bedsheet, a sneaky stowaway. Each time I vacuumed, I imagined I'd hear the dull clunk of plastic against the nozzle. Every time I cleaned, I thought maybe I'd overlooked it, but it never came back. Story 7. The remote wasn't just a gadget, it was the key to my house. An old-school alarm system with a car-style fob, one button to arm, one to disarm. Convenient when you're stumbling through the door with luggage at midnight. Not the kind of thing you want to misplace. I'd been traveling for work, hopping hotels, juggling meetings, and that little black remote lived in my pocket the whole time. The keyring holder had snapped months earlier, so it never stayed with my actual keys. I kept it close, always in the same spot, because losing it wasn't just inconvenient. It meant coming home to a house I couldn't get into without punching the code like a burglar in my own living room. When I checked out of the hotel that Monday morning, I remember slipping it into my jeans pocket. At least, I thought I did. Hours later, when I finally rolled back into my driveway, bone-tired, the remote wasn't there. I dug into every pocket, checked my bag, my laptop case, even the floorboard of the car. Nothing. No problem, I told myself. I still had the code. I disarmed the alarm the old-fashioned way and shrugged it off. Maybe it had slipped into the lining of my bag. Maybe it had fallen behind the hotel nightstand. Either way, I'd sort it out later. Except I didn't. The next morning, I retraced my steps. I checked my jeans again, searched the dirty laundry pile, turned out the pockets until the seams strained. I emptied my computer bag onto the kitchen counter, rifled through chargers and pens and receipts. Nothing. The remote had vanished. By Sunday, I'd given up. I told myself I must have left it at the hotel. Maybe housekeeping had found it. Maybe it was already in a lost and found drawer next to chargers and wedding rings. I figured I'd call if I got desperate. For now, I just used the keypad and told myself to forget it. Then came Tuesday morning. I'd packed my clothes for another trip to Florida. Laundry done, bags ready. At 3 a.m., I dragged myself out of bed to watch a concrete pour before hitting the road. I pulled on the same jeans I'd worn days earlier, reached into the pocket, and there it was. The remote, sitting like it had never left. I froze, staring at it in the half-dark of my bedroom, the early morning silence pressing against my ears. My first thought was simple, impossible. I had checked these pockets. Not once, not twice, but obsessively, to the point of absurdity. There had been nothing there. Now suddenly it was back. I turned it over in my hand, half expecting to see some sign it wasn't mine. A crack, a scratch, anything. But no. Same remote. Same faint wear around the button. The same little nick near the edge where it once hit the garage floor. It was mine. Relief and unease hit me in the same breath. I had it back, but I couldn't explain it. Not in any way that made sense. It wasn't the first time something had disappeared in our house, though. My daughter's glasses had once vanished, only to reappear neatly folded on her bed. Tools went missing and reappeared days later in plain sight. We always joked about a house troll, some mischievous little presence that liked to borrow things and return them when it got bored. But the troll never traveled before. Things always came back within the walls of our house. This time, the remote had disappeared on the road, hundreds of miles away, and returned right here, right in my pocket. I stood there, jeans half-buttoned, staring at the thing like it might evaporate again. A part of me wanted to laugh, to chalk it up to fatigue and forgetfulness. Another part of me whispered something I didn't want to hear. What if it wasn't me? What if it wasn't forgetfulness at all? Story 8. It was the early 2000s, back when after-school bus rides stretched on forever, and every kid stared out the window, trying to find something interesting to look at between suburbs and strip malls. I was maybe 12, doped up on the low-dose Ritalin. Half the kids my age were prescribed back then. By that point in the day, the stuff was wearing off, which meant my head wasn't foggy or distracted anymore. I was wide awake, restless, scanning the world outside. I leaned my forehead against the cool glass of the bus window, watching cars pass by in the opposite lane. The boulevard was always busy at that hour. Sedans, minivans, trucks. Adults gripping steering wheels, sometimes yelling into their giant brick-shaped cell phones. Ordinary people, ordinary moments. Nothing special. And then I saw it. An SUV, maybe a CRV or RAV4, one of those boxy little things, rolled up alongside us. At first, I didn't notice anything strange. It wasn't flashy. But then my eyes flicked to the driver's seat. Empty. No one had their hands on the wheel. No head over the seat back. Nothing. Just the steering wheel turning itself, guiding the car down the road like an invisible hand was at work. My brain scrambled for explanations. Maybe the driver had bent down to grab something? But from the bus, we sat higher up. If someone had leaned forward, I would have seen a shoulder, an arm, a movement. The seat was simply empty. That was when my eyes slid to the back seat. She was there. A woman pressed against the window, her entire torso twisted sideways, so she faced me directly. Her arms weren't raised, no waving or motion, just this eerie, unnatural posture, like her whole upper body had been shoved against the glass. Long, stringy black hair framed her face in tangled sheets. And the face itself blurred. Not pixelated, not smudged like my vision was failing, but wrong, as if the world hadn't finished sketching her features. She stared straight at me. Not at the bus. Not at the road. At me. Every muscle in my body went rigid. A bolt of cold shot through me, deeper than fear usually goes, the kind that sits in your gut and makes your breath hitch. My first thought was medication. This has to be the Ritalin. It's screwing with me. But no, my mind felt too sharp, too awake. The car kept pace with us for maybe 5 seconds, though it stretched in my memory like a lifetime. The bus hummed and rattled, kids talked and laughed around me, but all of that blurred out. There was only the SUV, driverless, and the woman with the blurred face. And then it slid past, gone into the stream of traffic, leaving me staring after it with my heart jackhammering. I didn't tell anyone. Not the kid next to me, not my parents later. What would I say? Hey, I saw a ghost hitching a ride in a car with no driver. They'd laugh, tell me it was the meds, or that I'd dozed off. And maybe that would have been easier to believe. But the memory stuck. Story 9. High school is lonely enough without reality itself turning against you. I wasn't one of the popular kids, not even close. Most of my classmates thought I was weird, quiet, awkward, never quite in step with their conversations. That day, we were called into the seniors' classroom to watch a chemistry experiment. Something flashy with colored flames meant to impress us. I didn't care much. I brought my phone with me, planning to text a friend if things got boring. I remember holding it in my hand, sending one quick message before slipping it closed. The weight of it was solid, reassuring. I was used to keeping it close, my little lifeline. When you don't have many friends nearby, the person on the other end of that screen becomes your anchor. I kept the phone resting in my palm, fingers curled lightly around it while my attention drifted toward the experiment. A few minutes passed. Then I glanced back down. The phone was gone. Not slipped. Not dropped. Not nudged to the side. Just gone, while my hand still lay in the same position, as if I were gripping air. Confusion hit first. I turned my hand over, stared at my empty palm, then looked around my chair. Nothing. I bent down, checked under the desk. No sign of it. My stomach began to tighten. I asked a couple of students nearby if they'd seen me drop it. They shook their heads. One of them even laughed, thinking I was joking. Panic began to creep in. I asked them to call my number. They did, more than once. No ring, no buzz, no glow from under a desk or across the room. It was as though the phone had been swallowed whole by the air. I searched everywhere. My desk, my bag, the floor. I even checked the hallway outside the classroom, just in case I'd absent-mindedly left it there earlier, though I knew I hadn't. The phone had been in my hand. I was sure of it. 15 minutes crawled by like hours. I tried to focus on the experiment, but all I could think about was the missing phone. The heat of embarrassment crept up my neck too. Everyone could see me frantically searching, and some of them smirked at my desperation. To them, it probably looked like another weird moment. To me, it felt like reality itself was mocking me. When the experiment ended and we returned to our own classroom, I trudged back to my desk, resigned to the idea that I'd lost it for good. Buying a new one would be impossible. I didn't have the money, and my parents would have been furious. I lifted the lid of my desk, already knowing it was empty. Except it wasn't. There, sitting neatly inside, was my phone, right in the center. My stomach dropped. I froze, staring at it like it was a bomb waiting to go off. I picked it up with trembling fingers. The screen lit, showing 3 missed calls, the ones my classmates had made earlier. The blood drained from my face. The desk had been empty when I checked before. I was sure of it. I'd searched it thoroughly, even pulled everything out to prove it wasn't hiding. Now the phone was back, quietly waiting, like it had never left. I wanted to accuse someone of a prank, but it didn't add up. No one was close enough to slip it from my hand without me noticing, and no one had access to my desk during that experiment. Besides, most of them didn't even talk to me, let alone orchestrate something so elaborate. I slipped the phone into my pocket, trying to act calm, but my hands wouldn't stop shaking. Relief mingled with unease. I was glad to have it back, but nothing about it made sense. The experience haunted me for weeks.